This is a very important She'elah Tshuva of Harambam in Teshuvot Harambam Resh Kaf Daled. And what's important is that there are many forms of Judaism that do not comport with the Masoret of the Torah Shebe'al Peh that we receive from Chachamim, that don't comport with the thinking of the great Chachamim like Harambam, like others, like Yosef ben Megas, like the Rif. There's a lot of inventions, is what I'm saying. And if people saw the inventions, people from the old generation saw the inventions that they have in the new generation, they wouldn't know what they're even talking about. And I guess a great example, and I talk about it quite a lot, is that we won't serve in the army. We'd rather die than serve in the army. That's a Christianization of Judaism. Of course, Judaism doesn't recognize that, right? For Am Yisrael, the holy duty is to defend Am Yisrael. You make Chilul Shabbat if you want to save people from enemies. So to say that you don't serve that you won't stop studying Torah is ridiculous. But I'm saying this not to be polemical, but to point out that there's a lot of forms of Judaism that are just fraudulent forms of Judaism. Another example is Reform Judaism. It's fraudulent. At least they're a little more honest than the Haredim, but the point is, it's still a fraudulent form of Judaism. Right? The Haredim are dishonest. They reform Judaism, but they don't say it. At least the Reform say we reformed it. But the point is, there's many types of Judaism that are just farcical. And the Judaism of the Halabi Hachamim and the Shami Hachamim from Damascus, from Halab, from Syria, to me is an authentic form of Judaism. It's authentic because it has its mekorot. It didn't, change over time and say now we're, now we decided ABC. Something that there's a pasuk in Ha'azin who says Hadashim Mekarov Ba'u Lo Se'aru Mavotechem. There's certain new things that your fathers would never have thought of. So let's say Saba Shlomo Alav Shalom, his type of Judaism, Rabbi Akiva would have felt fine sitting with Saba Shlomo in a Bet Knesset and praying and discussing Divrei Torah. He was Anav, he was Yerei Shamayim, he was Sanua, right? So the Halabi form of Judaism is an authentic form of Judaism. So all right, and then like most of the I think the Hasidim is what most of the Hasidic groups are a type of minut. They're meaning that they have these weird ideas about different things. I just gave you one example. I love the Chabad Lubavitch at the cultural level. I love them. They're wonderful people. But they have weird halachot. Like, for example, they say that it's forbidden to sleep in the sukkah on Sukkot. That's an example of a fraudulent. Right. I mean, the halacha is if you don't want to sleep in the sukkah, you don't sleep in the sukkah. But don't say that it's haram to sleep in the sukkah on Sukkot. You understand? So that's a type of...
Yeah, they really say that.
Yeah, I mean, you can check that and confirm it. If I'm wrong, mechila, selicha v'chapara. I don't wish to say anything that's less than accurate. But the point is that it's a fraud. It's fraudulent. It's not that it's a different type of Judaism. It's a fraudulent type of Judaism. It's very important to know that. Now, what Harambam writes in the She'elah Tshuva, he's basically destroying the entire Halabi notion. I'll tell you in a moment what the Halabi notion is. And there's a very powerful idea in Sephardic Judaism, which Jdeda Alav Shalom wrote about in his book Lubis El Moshe Hazan. And this stream of Judaism says the following: we have a problem. We have goyim. Okay, we have goyim, and we have a goy culture, and we're in galut. And the question is, what is the best strategy to deal with the goy culture? You understand the question? They have beautiful buildings. They have beautiful, music. They have beautiful clothing. How do we deal with the goy culture? You understand the question?
Yeah.
And there were two approaches. One was the Ashkenaz approach, which was build walls, stay away from them. And the other was the Sephardic approach, which is live in open cities, don't be afraid of them. But what you do is you take the beautiful things in their culture and you incorporate them into into your way of life. So, for example, the beautiful music. They have beautiful singers, Abdul Wahab, Farid al-Atrash, Kulthum. Beautiful, beautiful music. What do you do with it? Instead of being hidden away and taking the radio and smashing it, you take their music and you put Syrian words to it, Hebrew words to it. Mechila. Beautiful shirot v'tishbachot lakadosh baruch hu. Understand? That's the Sephardic way. So, for example, in Spain, the Arabs. This is when the Arabs were normal. The Umayyads, that's it. The normal Arabs, maybe the Umayyads. So they used to be beautiful, beautiful poetry. They used to write beautiful poetry. So what did we do? We took their system of writing poetry and we wrote beautiful poetry. The Azharot that have to do with Torah, that have to do with Mitzvot, etc. Right? This is always the Sephardic approach to the Goy culture. Is not the Ashkenaz. The Ashkenaz approach says they're superior to us. So what can I do if they're superior to us? I have to hide from them. I have to hide my children from them because I know that if my child was to go into a Goy university, he would immediately become a Chiloni and he would immediately capitulate and give up everything he ever learned, and that would be it. So the only solution is the ghetto. I have to live in a cloistered environment. Understand?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So, that's one approach. That approach failed, because what happens with that approach is every time a person escapes the ghetto and he's exposed to the Goy culture, he immediately feels a sense of, what am I going to do? I have to give in. Okay, so, and that's what happened. That's why they go from the crazy Hasidut to the crazy Chiloniyut. I mean, there's nothing like, it could be complete Hasid, crazy. And then suddenly becomes a complete Chiloni, like who disrespects Torah and Mitzvot, has contempt for everybody and everything that has to do with Judaism. The Syrian approach, the Sephardic approach, the Syrian approach was always very successful because we weren't afraid of the Goyim. You have beautiful songs, we have more beautiful songs. You have beautiful poetry, we have more beautiful poetry. You have beautiful houses, we have more beautiful houses, right? That was our approach. You understand? Okay, I'm going to switch places. So that's basically the approach of Sephardic Jews, and it's something that the Syrian Jews, meaning from Halab, from Damascus, did quite beautifully and successfully. We never felt inferior to the Goy culture around us, and that's why one of the reasons that there's very little assimilation among the Syrians is because of that, right? Because we didn't feel that sense of inferiority, that we have to hide from the Goyim, that we're afraid that their culture is so much more superior to ours, and this is part of the craziness of the Haredim today, how they're against studying mathematics and history, in school, because that would quote unquote corrupt the mind of the student, right? Well, how could a student possibly be religious in Shomer Torah Mitzvot if he knows that 1 + 1 = 2? It's obvious that that type of knowledge will corrupt the mind. It shows a fundamental inferiority, meaning these people recognize that they are inferior to the Goyim. And because they recognize that they're inferior to the Goyim, they'll protect their children from the Goy, let's say mathematics, right? Etc., etc. So you understand so far, yes? Now, this She'elah Tshuva, if I was to teach it in a Chalabi form, would be almost scandalous. Because he's speaking here against an aspect of what I just said. The aspect of what I just said is that music is something that we can take and we can adopt into our own culture. And Harambam seems to put a certain limitation here. So I think it's a very important She'elah Tshuva to read, because Harambam, needless to say, the Judaism taught by Harambam is probably the most authentic form of Judaism. But there are authentic forms of Judaism. This is something that Sh'eda talks about in the horizontal society. And this is why Melissa is important, because Harambam here is making an argument. he doesn't make this argument in the Mishneh Torah, by the way. Now, I want to explain to you. Harambam is a very careful writer. The Mishneh Torah is a crystallization of Talmudic law. And therefore, he's very careful not to put anything that's not from the Gemara in the Mishneh Torah, unless he says so, Nir Ali, or whatever. He says, Nahagu, Kachanag, whatever. Like in the case of Sirchot, he says, even though the halacha is like this, but the minhag is like this. He's very careful. In his She'elot U'Tshuvot, you see more of his personal thinking about things. Right? So what you're going to see in this She'elot U'Tshuvah is you're going to see Harambam's personal thinking about music. And this personal thinking about music is at odds with what we do. I admit it. Right? I completely acknowledge that there is a dissonance between what Harambam is saying here and what Sephardic Jewish communities have done, or at least especially the Syrian Jewish community has done. So I want to read the She'elot U'Tshuvah carefully, and it's so significant that the question is from Halab, She'ela me'aram sova. That's all you need to know. Because the Syrian Jews as they are today is the way they were, 100 years ago, and apparently 1,000 years ago. They have this thing where music was a big thing. Okay? Now, by the way,
Music is a big thing, yeah.
I mean, we have the makam of the week. Which makam are you doing, and why did you do this song?
Yeah,
You should have done that song because this week is, what you're
It's
eating.
like Havanut, not music, no?
Fine, but you see, you got to read what he writes here. It's a little shocking.
Doesn't he write about this in the Mishneh? I don't know actually what you said that he didn't write, but he does write a little bit about the topic in the Mishneh Torah, no?
Are you talking about the L'chot Aniyot?
Yeah.
There, and maybe let me get L'chot Aniyot. Let's start with there. Let me get what he writes there. So 1 second. Because what he writes
Should I
there,
forget it?
yeah, get it.
Forget
Because what he writes there is based upon the Talmud. So he's very careful the way he presents the law. Let's get it. In Sefer Zemanim, L'chot Aniyot, Perek He, Halacha. Let me just read 1 second. Now, read Halacha Yodalid. Bechem gazru.
לכם גזרו שלא לנגן בכלי וכל מיני זמר.
All right, so now this, actually, read Halacha. I'm going to read Halacha Yodalid first, and then because I want you to understand Halacha Yodalid within the context of Halacha Yodalid. משחרב בית המקדש תקנו חכמים שהיו באותו הדור שאין פונים לעולם בניין מסויד. Okay, he's going to bring a whole series of laws that the Chachamim instituted as a reaction to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Okay? So one of them is En bonin le'olam binyan mesuyad, right? A person does a seudah, me'chaser mimenu me'at, etc., etc. Now we v'chen gazru.
לכם גזרו שלא לנגן בכלי שיר וכל מיני זמר בכל משמיעי קול של שיר אסור לשמוח בהן ואסור לשומען מפני החורבן.
Now look what he says here. He's referring specifically to the Churban Beit HaMikdash, right?
Okay.
And he says it's forbidden to play a musical instrument, and any type of whatever the type of musical producing device is. Right? So also singing, like that would be vocal singing. Asur lismoach bahen. So you're not allowed to either play the instrument or asur l'shoma'an, and it's also forbidden to listen. So even if you're not the one playing, but you're the one listening, it's forbidden. Why? Mipnei churban. Mipnei churban. You see what's in mipnei churban? Okay. The afilu shira bafeh. So now, before when he says I misspoke, I misinterpreted the law. When it says v'chol mashmei kol shel shir asur lismoach bahen, it can't be what I said, singing with the voice, because now he says singing with the voice is forbidden with wine. The afilu shira bafeh al hayayin asura, meaning here you're singing with no musical instrument, but you're drinking wine. That's asur. חבות שנאמר
בכל משמיע קול של שיר is call of music, not call of
Right.
voice.
It doesn't bapeh. It can't be bapeh like I wanted to interpret it, because if it was bapeh, then why would he say now that bapeh is forbidden with wine? But you just said bapeh is forbidden by itself. So it can't be bapeh. So kol shashim means
Yeah.
whatever sound, the flute, harp, whatever it is, it's forbidden. But in addition, vocalized singing is also forbidden if it's alayain.
וכבר נהגו כל ישראל לומר דברי תשבחות או שיר של הודאות לאל וכיוצא בהן על היין.
He's saying, but the minhag of Israel is what the Syrians do, what the Chalabis do, namely the shir pizmonim. You can sing pizmonim alayain, afilu alayain. You understand?
Yeah, like on Shabbat.
But what's interesting is he doesn't limit it to Shabbat. He says pizmonim is mutar even with wine, and it doesn't have to be on Shabbat.
I mean, he doesn't really say it's mutar. He just says that that's what they do, no?
Okay, but he's recording it in the Mishnah Torah. It doesn't say minhag ra'azeh. I think he's acknowledging the reality that there's a consensus among Am Yisrael to sing, right? To sing.
Okay.
That's what he's bringing. I don't want to twist his words. He's bringing the minhag. He's recording the minhag, and he's not zo'ef on the minhag. There's a minhag ta'ut uzeh ve'en ra'ui la'asot ken. Now again, it doesn't say Shabbat. He says shir shel hoda'ot alayain, afilu alayain. So it's the middle of the week. I'm drinking wine. I want to sing El Me'od Na'ala, whatever, Surya El. It's mutar, according to Harambam. Afilu alayain.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I mean, that hard for me to say that it's mutar according to Harambam, but I also wouldn't say it's asur according to Harambam.
But he says Uchvar Nahagu. Uchvar Nahagu is almost it's almost like I would tell you that he probably, and it's clear from the She'elah that we're about to read, that he doesn't like this minhag, but he's telling you Uchvar Nahagu, and he doesn't say minhag ra. So he's being, the Mishneh Torah is a very meticulous piece of literature. He's being very careful. Now, in the She'elah Shuvah, you're going to see his real opinion on the matter. But that's because it's She'elah Shuvah. Somebody asked him for his opinion. He's going to give his opinion. Somebody asked me what I think about the Charedim. I'll say I think they're parasitical embarrassment. But maybe if I was writing a book of halacha, I wouldn't necessarily go into that type of emotional expression, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now, the Charedim in Israel who don't serve in the army, of course, is what I meant, and who insist that everybody support them. Okay, that's what I meant. But obviously, I don't mean regular, just people that are hardworking or that contribute something to society. All right. Let's read the She'elah Tshuvah now. Resh Kaf Daled. She'elah me'aram sova. Again, so important probably because Harambam apparently knew that the Syrian Jews were into pizmonim, right? Hamutar lishmoa shira im shirei ha'ezor ha'arveim bazemer, right? Can you hear music? Now, it's not clear what he means with im shirei ha'ezor ha'arveim. Maybe he's referring to Syrian music that has the Arabic music to it, as our shirim v'tishbachot are, right? Because in the Mishneh Torah, he just says, "Uchvar nagul kol Yisrael omar divrei tishbachot or shir alayain." But here, it's to listen to the singing of the Arabs, apparently, right? And the zemet would probably be musical instruments. Let's see. I think the She'elah is a little difficult to deconstruct, and part of it is missing. I understand, right? Because there's a lot of portions missing, so it's very difficult to understand what the question meant. But the answer tells us what we need to know. You want to read?
I could, yeah.
ידוע.
ידוע שעצם הזמר והניגונים כולם אסורים. אפילו, yeah.
Yeah, he says it is known that music, right, musical instruments and music, they're all forbidden.
אפילו אין אומרים עליהם מילים כלל.
Even,
ואומרם ז"ל,
yeah, even if it's just music, pure music. I want to hear Beethoven. There's no Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, right? Or Ninth Symphony. And Ninth Symphony has some words, but okay, at the end. But okay, I want to hear just music, no words. That's asur.
ואומרם ז"ל, ודנה דשמעה זמרה בעקר.
וכן באר התלמוד. Okay, now, I'm going to open up the Gemara, Masechet Gittin. It's daf, it says here on the bottom, Daf Zayin Amud Aleph. Give me a moment. Now, let's read the Gemara. Shalchu le lemor ukva. It's about a little less than...
שלח למורוקבר.
Shalchu le lemor ukva. They asked mor ukva a question. It's about halfway down the page, but not really halfway, a little higher than halfway down. Shalchu le lemor ukva. Le lemor ukva question. Zimra men alan de asir. How do we know that music is forbidden? Yes?
Yeah.
Shirtet v'chatav lehu. So when he wrote the pasuk, he didn't want to just write the pasuk because it's haram to write the pasuk just like that. So he wrote it. He did serita, like shirtut. Sherita is when you write a sefer Torah, you first do those lines.
Yeah.
And then he wrote the pasuk shirtet v'chatav lehu because he wants to give them the pasuk, and it says, "Chavod bashir or bashir lo yishtu yain."
אל תשמח ישראל אל גיל בעמים.
Yes. Al tisma Yisrael el gil ba'amim. O Israel, do not find joy with the joy of the goyim. Right? Very interesting. Al tismach Yisrael el gil ba'amim. Al tismach Yisrael el gil ka'amim. Right? So, all right. That's very interesting pasuk. Okay. So do not rejoice like the nations. All right. That's what he says. So they ask him a question. Do not rejoice like the nations. Why? Because
I don't get it. But why is he misartet is a pasuk? He's not allowed to write it down.
That's a very good question, and it has to do with the fact that the Torah shebichtav is not regular words. You can't just write it. So you have to do shirtut, and then you write it. But and I think Stella discusses this, I believe. I don't remember where, but I know I remember he once explained it to me. But the point is that was the formal way of writing pasukim, because he wrote it. He wrote it.
I feel like usually
he wrote it in the letters of the Sefer Torah, right? Apparently he wrote it bidyo ala klaf. It seems like that's le'aniyut dati. I don't know this for sure, but he wrote it bidyo ala klaf, and then he wrote b'shirtut.
Usually when like the Gemara has these I don't know, I guess we're not going to go so deeply into the specific sugya, but they don't usually write the stuff down.
Exactly, but the point is that in this story, that's what happened. And let's continue. We're digressing. Maybe he's
teaching us something about the kaf and the bet.
No,
he's writing it.
I'm not sure. Let's continue.
Okay. Yeah. ונשלח להו מאחה בשיר לא ישתו יין.
The pasuk says בשיר לא ישתו יין. It's explicit in Yeshaya, meaning when you say gil ka'amim, what gil are you talking about? Is it maybe it's singing, maybe it's something else? So the question they're asking is, bring me the pasuk in Yeshaya, Perek Kaf, since you have the place. It's Perek Kaf Dalet, pasuk what?
Bet.
Bet?
Bet.
Okay. The pasuk says Bashir, not Bashir. You're going to ask Nikud Beh?
No.
It's Bashir. Okay.
Yeah.
Bashir lo yishtu yain. Yemar shechar leshotav. Okay. So Bashir lo yishtu yain is saying about the avlut of Yerushalayim or Am Israel, and it says that because of this avlut, Bashir lo yishtu yain, they no longer sing and drink, right? And Yemar shechal leshotat, and the alcohol is now bitter to those who drink it. So far, what we see with Mor Ukva, in the answer of Mor Ukva, it had to do with the Chorban Abayit. Because of your averot, you shouldn't be also the pasuk in Yeshaya has to do with the avlut, over the destruction. Bashir lo yishtu yain, Yemar shechal leshotat. Okay, continue. Interesting, the footnote here that we were looking at in the Shelah Tshuva, it refers to Sota Memchet Aleph. Yeah, I was looking at the wrong footnote. I was looking at Gitin Zayin, which brings the makor for the Pesukim. But Sota Memchet Aleph, which is what I'm looking at now, Mishebat la Sanedrin Botel Hashir Mibet HaMishtaot. Okay, when the Sanedrin was canceled, let's say, they stopped having singing in places of drinking. So they have Bet HaMishtaot, they would have singing in the Bet Mishtaot, and they stopped that. Shene'emar, Ashir, Lo Yishtu Yain. They no longer sung and drank wine. Okay? Now, if you look at the Gemara, Umimai, Demi Shibat La Sanedri Ketiv. How do you know that when the Pasuk says Bashir Lo Yishtu Yain, is referring to that from when the Sanhedrin was canceled? Maybe it was some other event that led to the annulment of music or annulment of singing in the places of drinking. So when the Zekenim Misha'ar Shabbat, the Zekenim is the Sanhedrin, when that was annulled, Bachurim Mineginatan, then the Bachurim start singing. Okay? And on this, Amarab, the ear that hears music should be uprooted. Now, you see that the context of this, so far, every single thing we read, the context was the Chorban Abayit. Every single thing. Adrabah, what you learn from this Gemara, or from the Mishnah, is that they used to sing in the Bet Mishtaot, meaning that it was, apparently they had Bet Mishtaot, where they would have drinking, and in these places for drinking, they would have singing, before Chorban Abayit. And the same, because of Chorban Abayit, we now stop that. So, I want to be careful the way we read this, and this is why Harambam, in Ilchot Aniyot, is very circumspect. He follows exactly the Gemara. The Isur of singing, with wine, by the way, is within the context of the Chorban Abayit. But then he says, but now we sing with wine, or at least Keval Nahagu, that they sing with wine. Not on Shabbat, in general. Okay, so now we understand. So because we need to create the boundaries for what we're talking about. Okay.